Greetings and salutations. Welcome to this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Before we begin, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share this show with a friend. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. And before we begin, it pains me to announce that our 2025 season of Play Noir has had to have been put on hold. Where we were going to perform, that venue is under reconstruction, or under renovation still, I should say, and is not going to be ready for our November 2025 run, so we're going to push things till spring of 2026. That being said, it's going to give us the opportunity to go back, revisit the 160 plus plays that were submitted, and really narrow them down and give everything a fair shot so we can really create a very special and hopefully perfect evening of noir. So, on to bigger and better things. My guest today is a playwright and actor born and raised in Los Angeles, California. He is currently a commissioned writer with the Latino Theater Company as part of the Circle of Imaginistas. In addition to the Little King of Norwalk, other works include Queen of Califas and Southgate and the Rehabilitation of Walter. Might help if I put that Oxford comma in there. His plays have been developed with the Oregon Shakespeare Festival's Black Swan Lab, Latinx Play Project, the Latinx Theater Alliance Los Angeles, Company of Angels, LA City College, New Visions, New Voices, and the Latino Theater Company at the Los Angeles Theater Center. He received his BA in English from Southern Methodist University and his M.F.A. in acting from the UCLA School of Theater, Film, and Television. He has also taught courses in theater at UCLA School of Theater, Film, and Television, and Los Angeles City College. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Israel López Reyes.
Thank you so much for that introduction.
Thank you for all you've done. So I'm going to get to the point. Playwright or actor first?
Yeah, I started as an actor. I went to UCLA and received my M.F.A. in acting at UCLA in that program. And I've been acting since I was in high school, really. But after graduate school, I traveled around the country. I acted, in the regional theaters, all kinds of theaters for a long time. But I had always been writing plays and, been encouraged to continue writing my own stories and stuff like that. So lately, it's been more and more of that. And of course, with this commission, the focus was just on writing and getting this play ready for a production at the Latino Theater Company.
Sure. And forgive me, because usually I put this in the intro, and you have something opening up soon. So why don't you announce that real quick, and I will make sure that the tickets are in the show notes. That's a given, but that's my fault for usually putting it there in the show notes. So what is this play that you've been commissioned, and when does it open?
So the play that I've written, it was a commission from the Latino Theater Company as part of their Circle of Imaginistas initiative. And the play is titled The Little King of Norwalk. It's written by me, directed by Jeffrey Rivas, and it opens Saturday, October 4th at the Los Angeles Theater Center.
And when does it close?
And it closes Sunday, November 2nd.
Wonderful. And again, like I said, we'll have that ticket link down below for those of you that are in Los Angeles or planning to visit during that time. Make sure you go see it. It's a beautiful theater. I'm sure it's going to be a beautiful play. Okay, so we established, before we get into what got you into playwriting, what got you into theater to begin with? Did you just you wanted to act, and have you always been interested? You always been on stage? How did that come about?
I think my introduction to performance in general goes back to when I was about maybe 8 or 9 years old. My mom decided to go back to school. She was at East LA College and later transferred to Cal State LA. And because, childcare is such a challenge, she would take me with her. And sometimes I'd be in class with her. Sometimes she'd be like, go do your homework, here's some dinner money, and I'll meet you here at whatever time. And so I would kind of be walking around both campuses at ELAC and at Cal State LA. And, there were all these open galleries, dance performances, theater performances, music performances happening. And so that kind of opened me up to this whole world of, storytelling and stuff like that. And then in high school, I went to Downey High School, and I'm still very much an introvert, but I wanted to take a drama class to get, open up and all that stuff. And I had this great teacher, Sherry Steinberg.
And how old were you at the time?
I was like 15.
Okay, just curious.
Yeah. I was like 15, and I was new at Downey, and I was like, I really want to open up and make friends, and maybe this is a good opportunity, And I loved art and cinema, and I'm a drummer. I play music, so I was like, maybe this drama thing will be fun. It's a good community or something. And she was wonderful, and she it was fun. I remember it was like, oh, this is a lot of fun, but it was also, I learned that the theater was rigorous, and it was challenging, and it was like this community effort, right? How do we figure out this story, and how do we tell it in the most effective way? And so as a kid, I think I was really attracted to that. Like, I think if it had just been fun, I would have been like, oh, well, that was nice, and moved on to whatever it was I was going to do. But because there was a level of rigor, and Sherry Steinberg, has so much, I remember she had so much respect for the art form, and she came from a family of artists, and I was really attracted to that rigor, that challenge with each production that we do. But yeah, I mean, so I started acting since then, and in regards to acting, it was never like, I want the spotlight on me. It was more so like, I want to tell stories that matter. Mm-hmm. And whatever I have to do to tell that story, whether it's as an actor or as an ASM or scenic painter or whatever, I want to tell that story for the community. And I was attracted to that. So that's really, even as an actor, you go in for film, TV, commercials, a regional theater, or local theater. And that's the question that I always ask myself, like, is this a story that, you want to tell? And is this a meaningful story, whatever the context is? Writing is just an extension of that.
Okay. And then what was the trigger that, how long did it take of acting that you decided, all right, I'm gonna sit there and tell a story myself, not through performance, but through my own writing and my point of view?
I think
not that performance can't be from your point of view.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I was taking some courses at Cerritos College in Norwalk, and they had this great thing. I'm not sure if they still do it, but it's called the Summer One Act Festival. Okay. It's a festival of, I don't know, like 6 to 8 plays. They're not one acts, they're more like 10-minute plays. Okay. But it's student written, student directed, student designed, and they would allow you to use the theater, and they'd put it up, and tickets would be sold, and you would have an audience. And I started writing, little stories here and there, and I submitted a couple, and 2 of them were done, and I really loved that experience. And so I just kept doing it. I mean, there's also the fact that as a Latino guy, as a Mexican American, just in general, it's difficult to find stories or places that will celebrate you and have you help them tell the story. And so I didn't want to be waiting around for those stories to be told. I wanted to take action and contribute, and it's one of the things that I'm most proud of. Like, for example, this play, Little King of Norwalk, there's 6 Latino, Mexican American, Chicana actors in it, and it's like, and Jeff Rivas is a Chicano actor and director, and I'm so proud of that. Like, I created a vehicle where these 6 people could be seen, and this director could tell this story and knows the world, and so writing allows me to have that influence.
Sure. Going back to the 2 that you wrote at Cerritos, mm-hmm. Did you just write out, this is the story I'm going to tell, and then I'm like, it's done, and I'm going to stage it? Or, or did you actually, I got to work on this needs to change? Or did you just like, wrote my 10 pages, it's 10 minutes, I've completed it, and now let's put it up?
Yeah, it was so early on. I think
Sure,
I was experimenting and trying to find structure,
Sure.
The balance between just being clever and actually driving a story forward. I was trying to figure out, like, okay, every line, does this line move the story forward? Is it dramatic action, or am I just kind of, being self-indulgent? It was a lot of that stuff, but I do remember doing some rewrites. One of my friends who was a student there as well, they directed one. Each one of them directed one of them. So I was smart enough to collaborate with the director. They had asked me, do you want to direct this yourself? And I was like, no, I want to work with the director and have that other point of view to help me. And it was a lot of fun. I just remember it was a lot of fun. It wasn't as... not that writing is stressful, but I think now there's more responsibility that comes with it that I love. But back then it was just like, going for it and trying it and seeing like, you start to see what you care about, what your voice is, and the issues that you want to talk about,
What was the journey from those first 2 one-acts that you wrote at Cerritos, and then where did things travel to from there?
Yeah, so after that, I kept writing these, I guess they were, they were full-length plays. I wrote a handful of them, and I would have friends, come over and just read them. And they were always, as an actor, that is the thing that influenced my writing. I was always trying to create characters that I cared about. It took me longer to find structure and, develop those elements a little bit more. But I would, after those 2 little one-act plays that I wrote at Cerritos, during my time at SMU, and then even as a grad student at UCLA in acting, I was still writing my own plays.
Sure.
And I wrote maybe like 2 or 3 that, that I helped, that I would write, and then my friends would help me read it, and that was pretty much it. It was just kind of more of an exercise than I want to get produced type of deal.
Sure. And there's nothing, and I don't think there's anything wrong with writing character pieces as well. What was your character process like about discovering who those characters were and putting them into, I don't know if you were putting them into situations, because I know we talked about structure and we'll get into that, but I'm more interested in your approach to character, especially when that's your focus and you don't know about anything. Not to say that you didn't, but like that's what you're focusing on. So I'm curious what your approach to that was.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, it was interesting because I never thought too hard about it. It was like what I write is about my community and people I see or interact with all the time that I don't see on stage. Mm-hmm. And so in a lot of ways, I was just writing what I was hearing and experiencing. And the characters came from that, and their wants, their needs, their dreams, their fears. Mm-hmm. I was trying to articulate that, right? Early on. And so those pieces were very much about, I'd write these full-length plays, and the characters, one of the things I discovered is like, okay, well, my characters are clear, but what's the structure here? How can I make this more effective for the character? And how can I tell the story in a more effective way? Which is what led me to dive deeper into structure and more formal elements of playwriting, so that the story and the character could then be highlighted even more, right? Yeah. So that was kind of the beginning of that.
So you've gotten these 3-4 pieces, you've done little table reads and stuff with your friends and whatnot, and then you decide that you're going to delve into structure. Mm-hmm. Where do you go for that? Or did you just come to the realization on your own? It's like, there's something missing. So what's that journey like? Where did you find the elements of that?
Yeah, so, I reached out to people. I started to get more involved in writer circles and things like that. I read everything that I could. And I read everything that I could about writing for the stage. But I also, would read all the writers that are like the Arthur Millers and stuff like that. I would read those plays and try and learn from that, from their structure and what they were attempting to do, and in their arcs with their characters. So just anywhere where I could learn, where I could read, I started to pay attention to that. In regards to formal classes, when I was at UCLA, there was a couple of instances, some quarters. We were incredibly busy in the in the graduate acting program, but there was a couple of quarters where I had some time and I would use that time to go to the M.F.A. playwriting classes, and I picked up some tools there, and I got to learn and just sit in and listen a lot, and that was really cool.
Then they just allowed you to pop in?
Yeah, they allowed me. It was pretty cool. When I was at UCLA, it was everyone had their own track in the M.F.A. program, M.F.A. playwrights, directors, and actors. But the 3 years that I was there, Michael Hackett, who was the chair, he created this program that was really cool where you had your own track, right? And that was wonderful. But there were instances where we got to take classes together, and so it was more layered. And a lot of actors got to do some writing. Some writers got to learn some directing tools and concepts. And some directors had the opportunity to kind of put themselves in an actor's shoes, so it benefited them. It benefited all of us, but it was a really cool interdisciplinary kind of vibe.
Okay, so you were actually signed up for the class. It wasn't like, well, I got some time, I'm going to go pop over into the M.F.A. class and just kind of crash there.
There was a playwriting course that we had to take with Hane Gigoma, who was he's a wonderful teacher, right. Edith Villarreal as well. But there were some instances where I just popped in. I asked permission, of course, but I did pop in. It was like, can I listen and just learn? And they were cool about it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So when you're reading Miller and Williams and whoever else, Beckett, whatever, what were you looking for? And did you recognize it?
Yeah, I think I was just trying to look for, okay, what is the story that they're trying to tell?
Okay. And
who is the anchor of the story, and how are we tracking them through this journey, right? I think I knew enough that was like, okay, we have an anchor, who's this one character, and they have this journey. There's an event that stirs all this up and moves the action forward, and then that leads to, another one down the line. I mean, it was really basic stuff that I was trying to like wrap my head around.
Sure.
And so I would read these things, and I love the language, and I love all the other characters, but I would take then a macro kind of point of view and just be like, cool, like what's the story here? And I would watch a lot of theater too, obviously. And as an actor, I've had an opportunity to work with incredible directors all over the country, and I would listen to them talk about like, this is the story of the play, and I'd try to learn in that way. But yeah, I think in those plays it was more like, okay, I know these little tools at that time around, and it's like, how do I not just get lost in the language or the beauty of the writing, and how do I also focus on the story and the structure of things? That was a big challenge for me. Yeah.
Were you taking notes, or were you just like, and were you noting when these things were taking place, if that makes sense? How far in did this happen? And then like, when does this, I guess, that whole arc thing is like inciting incident, climax, and
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You learn those tools, and then you start to like, of course, you start to see like, oh, okay, like this happens here, and then like this happens there, and then there may be the resolution, or there's some kind of new world that's created. And then, but the interesting thing is like, once you start to look for that, you start to see it, in everything, or especially the writers that, like the Arthur Millers, August Wilsons, all those writers, you start to see it in each of these works. You start to see those bones, and I think that's really, really important. It's all about, to me, it's not about complicated text or whatever.
Sure.
It's all about a story well told, no matter who the writer is. There's children's stories that are, little children's books that are stories well told, and that's why we remember them. Little Red Riding Hood. The storytelling is very clear when it's done well, and you remember the story, which is what I'm interested in. I would love for people to remember the stories that I write, not necessarily just the text that I write.
Sure. At what point, how long did it take you to, I don't want to say master. I don't know if I guess you can say we can master anything, but usually, we're always still learning, so I don't know if we can either say we've mastered it.
Definitely still learning, yeah.
So at what point do you think, like, all right, I've got this down. How long did it take? Was it a struggle or like, okay, And how did you approach it?
It's always a struggle. I think I've been really lucky and really fortunate that the Latino Theater Company, specifically Jose Luis, Evelina Fernandez, Jeff Rivas, Lucy Rodriguez, and Sal Lopez when I got out of grad school, they kind of really believed in my writing. I mean, they've given me so many readings of different pieces that I've had. They did the first public workshop of a one-act anti-war, one-act play that I have called Queen of Califas that Jose Luis Valenzuela directed, and they're giving me my first production. And so that whole partnership has been really beautiful, and that's really where I've learned the most about writing, because not only am I a commissioned writer with the Latino Theater Company, I'm also on staff. I'm the education coordinator there. Okay. But I've been able to sit in and assist Jose Luis Valenzuela on productions. And so I learned more about storytelling that way. And my mentor, Evelina Fernandez, is a wonderful writer. And she's great about structure and about storytelling. And I've learned a lot from her. But definitely I'm not a master of storytelling at all. It's always a struggle. It's a great struggle, and you're always learning, and it takes time, and it takes collaborators that you trust, and really sitting and staying and simplifying what the story might be, I think. And just really, really trying to ask yourself, like, what am I trying to say with this story? What am I trying to say with this play? Why now? Why am I writing this character? Why does it matter? It's always a wrestling match in that way, And it's so interesting. There's so many distractions nowadays, especially for my generation. I feel like there's so many social media and streaming things. Like, there's just so much stuff out there. I think writers nowadays have it harder, because it takes more time to kind of sit there and find that.
When I do a writing workshop for high school theater students, and we talk about that. In Stephen Pressfield, I bring this up in almost every episode. It's actually been a few, so you got a break. I don't know if you're familiar with the War of Art.
No.
Okay. It's a book that talks about resistance. Okay. And how we will avoid writing, and we will do anything else but. We will actually, do check email, do chores, wash the dishes, whatever we don't want to do. And so it's interesting that you say that. Yeah, I think it is hard because there are all those distractions. You have to really just force yourself. But once you get in that flow state, it really just starts. And then you get excited.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't know if you've ever been in the position where it's like, okay, my sponge is full. I can't write anymore. I need to stop and pull myself away. And then so you go to bed and they're like, and you just can't sleep because the story's still there, and it's what's next, and so, So, when you're in this moment, when you're talking about what am I trying to say, at what stage are you at, and where does this come from? If that makes sense, and maybe I'm not articulating it well. It's like, what's coming first? What are you trying to say, or is it already there, and you're trying to extract it, and you just haven't gotten there yet? Is that what it's about? I really want to unpack this and really delve into what's going on mentally with. Is it a specific idea? Have you already started? And then it's just like, I'm 10, 20 pages in, and then what am I trying to say? I don't know. I really want to. Kind of get into that mindset of how you approach this and, your process.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's, for me, it's like, and I think for a lot of writers, right, we all have questions, big questions about the world at whatever age that we're at or point in our lives that we're at. And it starts from there. I have for example, with the Little King of Norwalk, there's a very specific question that I have. That's my secret, but it's a very specific question that I have for where I'm at in my life. And the play that I then start writing is me trying to answer that question.
Okay.
So that's where it starts. So I always have, and the questions could be anything, but it always starts from that question, and then the play is what you're writing to help you figure out the answer to that question.
So are you? Is that a struggle from within? It's like there's this what's going on right now that's triggering. Oh, I hate that word. That's really kind of not upsetting, but you know what I mean. It's like why does this keep coming back to me? Why am I so moved by this? And so, and is that where it's coming from?
Yeah,
absolutely. So do you set out for it, or do you sit down and write and let yourself discover exactly what it is, or is it both?
I think it's both, absolutely. And the question, it can be profound, it can be something lighter, it can be anything that you want, but it is a question that I think the writer has about the world in that context, in the context that they're in, and then they start writing the story that's going to help them maybe solve that question or answer that question, or maybe not. But I think that's the attempt. Yeah.
So when you have your question, you don't. My guess is you don't know the answer. Mm-hmm. That's why you're sitting down to write.
Exactly. Absolutely.
I guess it's your own formula. If you were like trying to figure out this equation, and you've got your symbols on the board and whatnot. We'll take Goodwill Hunting, for instance, and so you've got and you're trying to figure out what the answer is. So is it kind of like that approach? It's like here's my hypothesis, and then how do I make it become a thesis? So. Mm-hmm. So do you start outlining it, or do you just start writing and then try to discover what that answer is as your characters start to speak to you? I'm just curious what.
Yeah, I think the process depends on what the question is. But in this case, I had a question, and I should state the Little King of Norwalk is a commission from the Circle of Imaginistas at the Latino Theater Company, and we had a lot of conversations, and they gave the writers topics just as points of inspiration. So that was really helpful in regards to the story and the character that I developed for the play, or characters that I developed for the play. I always knew how it was going to end. Mm-hmm. So that was helpful. I didn't necessarily outline, but I knew how it was going to end. I knew what the penultimate scene was going to be between this guy, the main character, Juan Perez, and his sister. And I knew his choice. I knew what his choices were going to be that were going to lead up to that moment. So I had an idea. I didn't outline. Later on, I did. I got more specific about it. But when I first started writing, it was coming more from that place.
So did you write those? Did you write backwards? Did you write the penultimate? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
And then however you knew how it was going to end. So did you write those two scenes, and then whatever that other scene was that was going to get you there, and then just like, all right, now I got to figure out the rest and put everything else in between? Yeah.
So I knew how it was going to end, and then I worked backwards for sure. That is something I try and figure out first. Like, I've always felt that if you know or have an idea of what the end is going to be, or then you can work backwards and start to figure out the event that leads to that moment, what's called the climax, or the second major event, and then you can start filling in the obstacles for the character and how they get to that, and the choices that they make in each scene that drives them forward, and all of those things. But that's kind of where I started for this one, yeah.
Are there any tools that help you get there, or to figure that out? And I'll give you an example, for instance. And when there was a screenplay I started writing a long time ago. It's not complete. It's only been 27 years.
I hear you.
I think maybe,
I hear you,
maybe
yeah.
26. But, I think I was in that same spot. I kind of knew what that ending was going to be. But, and this is a screenplay, so music comes into a lot, so there are certain songs I'm like, I would hear and I'm like, there's some, I know what's happening. I know what's happening in the scene. All of a sudden I can go back and plug it in and try to figure it out from there. So are there any tools that you use, that when you're in that position where it's like, I'm not writing linearly, and the story's linear, but I'm not writing linearly.
Sure,
so are there anything, tricks or tools that you use that help you fill in those spaces in those scenes?
I need more tools and tricks.
Sure.
I think for this one, it was interesting. Like for this process, or I guess one tool that I use is just to like try and pay attention to what's around me. And I say that only because, for example, in this play, I knew what the end was going to be.
Right.
And I didn't quite know how to get it started. And then something happened. I was eating lunch one day. I was eating a taco somewhere after work. And my uncle calls me. And I always knew the story was going to be about a working class guy that was trying to get his life together, right? It came from a very simple place. I wanted to tell a story about a guy that was just, he was intelligent, he's capable, but he keeps making the same mistake, and he's on this kind of road to recovery. And one day, and so I didn't know how to start the story, and one day, my uncle calls me, and he's my dad's youngest brother, my tío Lalo, and he calls me and he goes, hey Junior. He calls me Junior because I'm named after my dad. But he goes, hey Junior, you think you can get me directions to this job interview I have? And I was like, yeah, man, of course. Because this is a thing with us. He always asks me for directions, and I text it to him, and it's just our way of kind of staying in touch too.
Sure.
But I was like, yeah, I'll get you directions. Where's your interview? Mind you, my uncle lives in Bellflower, okay? And he said, yeah, it's in Irvine. He's like a machinist or something. Yeah. He's like, it's in Irvine. And I said, okay, send me the address. It's in Irvine. I looked up the directions on the bus. Okay, he doesn't have a car. And I called him back, and I was like, Dio, it's going to take you 5 hours to get to Irvine, Jeez. Right? And 5 hours back. And he goes, no, I'll do it. And I was like, no, dude, you're not doing that. So I got him an Uber, and I got him an Uber XL because I wanted him to feel good for his interview and feel good on the way back. But that kind of started this idea, which you see in the story in the play, The Little King of Norwalk, about this guy who he loses his car, and he has to figure out how to get his act together to help his sister, to help pay the rent, and it sets off a chain of events. And in the play, this didn't happen to my uncle, but in the play, Juan Perez, who's the anchor of the story, he's trying to get a job, and he gets a DUI. And so in his job hunt, that leads to multiple other things, and we can talk about that later. But that was kind of like me just paying attention, knowing the story that I wanted to tell, knowing how it was going to end. And then that just kind of fell on my lap, talking to my uncle. And I guess that's a tool or a trick that I have, is just like, I write about my community, and a lot of the answers, to characters and situations and plot even, is right in front of me. It's just remembering that, like, I'm writing about local things. I mean, nobody writes about Norwalk or that community in Southeast LA. And the same thing happened when the Norwalk passed the homeless shelter ban. We can talk about that later, but I was writing this piece, and then that became the social political context of the play. It was always going to take place in Norwalk, but when that happened, I had a whole frame for the story, and it was kind of just a organic thing that happened because I was paying attention to my community and what was going on. So that's a tool that I use. It's just remembering to go back and listening to the folks that are around me and the people that are around me,
I'm trying to frame this question the right way. Mm-hmm. Do you think that it's, I don't want to call it success. Do you think it's writing about the community has it drawn interest in getting people in your seats? And that's kind of an unfair question. That's not, I don't, because it's important because that's what you want, because, you know, I'm just curious if that's another tool, because I mean, obviously you're not going to get somebody from, I don't know, I mean, maybe you would, you know, a rural Oklahoma who's going to do, you know, the King of Norwalk.
Yeah.
You know, but if you keep it local, because again, I think it's smaller markets, and not to say that LA is a small market, but there's pockets where you can find those successes. But, you know, at the same time, LA, the greater Los Angeles area, might still have a draw. Like, I know where Norwalk is, but I've never been there. Maybe this, you know, I don't know. Does that help you writing about the area that you live in? Yeah,
that's a fair question. I mean, I write about the area that I live in because as a writer, as an artist, my belief is that's all I have.
Sure.
And that's all I have when I think of other writers who are, you know, on the what do you call it, the pantheon of American theater or whatever it might be. They were writing about what they had and what was happening in their social, political context. I mean, Chekhov was writing about what was happening in Russia at the time, the political change from, you know, the whole political change there. All of his plays are about that. August Wilson always wrote about Pittsburgh, you know, which is where he was from. And so I'm doing the same thing. You know, I know it may not seem sexy or attractive, but I do believe that is my superpower. That is what I have. Now, that being said, I also believe that the Little King of Norwalk takes place in Norwalk, California, but the story is a universal one.
Right. And that's what I'm realizing as I ask that. And I guess my fear of asking that question, and I should be specific, by the way, because what it sounds like is like, you know, there's no other Latino communities out there.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
You know, out and about, you know, that wouldn't be interested in doing that. So when you brought up August Wilson, I'm like, well, of course, there's other communities that are going to want to do fences and whatnot, you know, stuff like that. So I guess the question I was fearful of asking is because I didn't want it to come across that your writing was exploitative of the community that you live in, and that's what my fear was in that regard.
Gotcha. No, not at all. It's a celebration of the community, and it's funny. It's a universal story that I think everyone across the board, they'll really connect with this story about this man who is really, you know, who's making choices and going about things and has flaws and all that stuff. And I think, and it's interesting, like, you know, I think commercially and everything, we're taught to not do that a lot of times. Mm-hmm. But I believe the opposite. And there's a lot of gifts in writing about your community. It's so funny. Like, I don't have social media. I have Instagram. Okay, sure. And I don't have it on my phone, so I hardly ever use it. But they put a post because they're promoting the play now, and they put up a post, Little King of Norwalk at the LATC and stuff. And like somebody wrote a comment. It was like, "I'm from Norwalk. I don't know how this happened or why, but I'm there. This is amazing."
That's great.
And so there are markets and stuff like that even. And it's interesting. Our previews are really large for a show at the LATC. I think, and we're selling really well. I think sometimes as Angelenos in general, you know, we underestimate, from all backgrounds, we underestimate how amazing our local stories are. Yeah. And I really feel like we got to celebrate them. Like, all the theaters in LA should be doing that. And I think it'd be amazing. You know, I can't wait till the Taper does a play about East LA, you know, or till the Taper does a play about Crenshaw, or I'm waiting for that story. You know, I think they would have a huge audience with that.
Well, you're writing them, so.
yeah. And, you know, it comes out of fear. It comes out of our own, you know, what we think is the model, right? But I try and promote that. It's like, that is our gift. And if we're not documenting what's happening in our world, and as playwrights, as writers in general, like, who's going to do it,
Sure.
Yeah.
But you've made a good point that I don't think that a lot of playwrights have even thought about, and that's your area, your community, where however small, however large it is, there's no shortage of subject matter.
Of course, always, right? It's a whole world of amazing stories. And for example, I have a friend, I went to school in Dallas, and a lot of my friends in Dallas have roots in like New Orleans, for example, or other small parts of Texas. And it's amazing because I'm thinking of them as writers, and like I could never write those stories, right. But I want to hear them. And they could never write about Norwalk, but they want to hear this story.
Sure.
So I think that exchange is also really important. Yeah.
I want to go back to a little bit the story that you're telling with the King of Norwalk and whatnot, because because it sounds like obviously there's some stakes at hand. Do you go for the first one that comes to mind, and you're like, yeah, that's great? Or do you like, no, that's a little too, not simple, but it's like, I think I can, how do I go to the next step? I mean, and then how do you approach that or succeed in making those stakes higher?
Yeah. I think it starts from a really simple place, right? Like something really simple. It's right in front of me. So in this case, I'm writing the story about this man who, the story, I should say what the story is real quick. And so this is the Little King of Norwalk. This is a story about a man who makes a promise to his mother to take care of his sister. He lies and impersonates someone to do so. Consequently, he loses everything. And so that's the story that we're telling, right? That being said, Juan, the way I thought of it is it starts from a very simple place. This is a guy named Juan Perez trying to get his life together. And then from there, I try to explode it, right? Explode the story. I mean, at the top of the play, almost close to the top of the play, we see him get a DUI and he's booked. And that's where he makes a promise to his mother, like, you know what? I'm going to get my stuff together.
You can say shit.
Okay, I'm going to get my shit together. I'm going to get my resume together. I'm going to do a good job, right? And help Wendy, his sister. And so in the following scenes, we see him dressed in his Goodwill suit. He gets a suit, brown shoes, blue suit, yellow tie, his resumes. He's handing out resumes. And we see him trying to do a good job. And then the day comes where he has to go in for his sobriety class. And he decides, you know what, I'm on this, I haven't found a job yet. And I want to do a good job. Like guys who have their stuff together wear suits. And so he decides to wear the same suit to his sobriety class because that's what organized people do. Yeah. And that's the moment he shows up for the class. There's some flawed politicians that are waiting for some important person from Sacramento. And he's mistaken for that individual, right? Right. And then so it builds and builds. But to answer your question, yeah, it starts simple. And then and that's what the workshop process and the reading process help you with is how do I, as we say, up the stakes or make it more urgent, make it more personal. And that's a process to make it, to explode it more and make it, more heightened. Yeah.
Let's talk about the commission.
Yeah.
So how did that come about? How does one get a commission? And then what was that whole journey for you? Like, did you already have the premise? Did you turn something in? Like, we like it, get to it.
Yeah. So Latino Theater Company has this initiative, Circle of Imaginistas. They selected 11 writers. And these were writers that they selected. So there was no submission process or anything, but they were writers that had either submitted in years prior that the company liked but maybe wasn't able to produce, or they were writers in kind of the LA orbit that they had heard about, that they admired, that they wanted to try and give an opportunity to. and I was one of those writers. They had done a reading of one of my plays early in years prior, but I was called and artistic director Jose Luis Valenzuela said, we would like you to be part of this writer's circle. And I said yes, and they commissioned the 11 of us to write plays based on topics that the company was kind of interested in investigating through plays, right, for their audience. And it's my first commission, but I loved the whole structure and process of it. Okay. It was really supported, and like I said, all the writers are there's like 5 emerging writers and 5 seasoned or more veteran writers, and we're all writing our own play, but the emerging writers are paired with a more veteran writer, so there can be this dialogue and you can learn from each other. And I was paired with Evelina Fernandez, and that was great. So that's how the commission came about. And through the process, all the writers receive readings, whatever support they need to try and get the play up and ready for production. And I should mention that the initiative is, I think, maybe 2 or 3 years old now. And of the 11 writers, 4 plays have already been produced.
Which ones were those, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, those were, Tacos La Brooklyn by Joel Ulloa, Ghost Waltz by Oliver Mayer, who I know was a guest here. The last play by Rick Kirby Hines, who I know he also had on the show. A Girl Grows Wings by Marisela Treviño Horta. And so there was those 4 have been commissioned, which is already astonishing, the fact that the company not only commissioned the writers but actually produced the work. So many times you get a commission and it never comes into fruition. But the 5th and 6th play will be in this season. My play is the 5th play to be produced, The Little King of Norwalk, and then the 6th play also goes up in the same building, same season. It's a beautiful play by my colleague Miranda Gonzalez, and it's titled Mascogos, which talks about the Underground Railroad to the south, to Mexico. Wow. Okay. Little known history there. So that's, at the end of the season, it would have been 6 plays that they produced, and next year they're going to produce more of them. So that's been the process, kind of.
So you have been, this has been a 2 to 3 year writing process for you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so how frequently, once you get your commission, and once you get paired up with your veteran writer, how frequently are you meeting?
Yeah, it depends on that partner, the pairing, right? Some pairs are like meeting every week. Some pairs are meeting once a month. It just depends on schedules and also like the vibe and stuff. I see Evelina Fernandez a lot more because I work with the Latino Theater Company. I'm on staff, so we would have conversations kind of frequently, just informally. And then as the play develops, I know for myself, as The Little King of Norwalk got closer, and then they announced that they were going to produce it and stuff, Evelina would give more specific notes and was a little bit more involved. But I love having Evelina as my mentor because she kind of, again, it all depends on what the pairing is, but she gave me a lot of space, and then when I needed more help, she got more involved, and it was a good match.
Yeah, that was my next question is what kind of involvement is that, to where it's just like, no, you should do it like that. Hang on, let me tell you what you should have written, and then here you go, I fixed it for you. Is that like what does that involvement look like? If you.
Yeah. It's a lot of conversations, but like, what are you trying to say with this play? Some recommendations, like maybe look at this film or this other play and to get some inspiration. Or it's a lot of kind of. It was great because Evelina is also like, you're your own writer. I'm going to write my play. You're going to write your play the way you want to do it. But here are some maybe guiding principles or things that I've learned that are really helpful. I mean, I remember, and some of it is stuff that maybe you've heard before, but it's different when it comes from someone that you're close to in this process. Yeah. So, for example, I remember Evelina gave me this note on one of my drafts that was like, you know, so-and-so, whichever character it was, it's like, she said, I you know, it seems like you're still holding them at arm's length. You know, simple things like that. And I realized, oh yeah, I'm not allowing that character to talk about how they feel in this circumstance, or their point of view in this circumstance. And so it was a lot of really gentle guiding principles that helped me kind of move forward in the process. At least for this pairing, it was really much like that. And then of course, you know, some very specific stuff like this structure, you know, you need to work on this structure, this scene, you know, take a second look at it. Do you really need it? You know, how is it?
Sure.
So it was really nice. It was a combination of both things, very specific notes, and then some kind of gentle pushes in the right direction. Yeah.
So at this point, like now, you got into previews. So how far into rehearsals? Obviously, I may be previews. I don't know. You tell me. How far into rehearsals and previews were you still writing or doing rewrites, or, you know? I'm just curious.
Yeah, the whole way through. I mean, the whole way through was like, it's a new play, you know, and in a lot of ways, there's still a lot of answers that need to be in the process. There's still a lot of questions that need to be answered, and because it's a new play, the exciting part about it, the maybe the scary part about it is it's untested. And so I've never been a writer that's like, oh, I'm done, like just do my play.
Sure, right.
I'm always like, how can we get closer to that thing, you know, for the public, for the audience. And so I worked on it in rehearsal. In tech, there were moments where, you know, we had some time, and it was like, do we really need this little section here, or this is a repetition, you know, just little things like that. And the actors that we have also gave me a lot of feedback about threading certain things together. And so you try and, you know, I take every note. You know, we have a limited amount of time, so sometimes you can't get to every note, but I take every note and I really try and make it work for everyone, and while sticking to the story, right, through the frame of the story. So, but I've worked on it during rehearsal, tech, and you know, it's a whole process. But I'm willing to continue to work on it until it's time, you know.
But I mean, don't you feel like if you've had previews and you've had audiences already, you still feel like it's not ready for an audience?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Once we get into previews, you know, you work on it during rehearsal, tech, and then you have the other element of the storytelling process, which is the audience, right? Which you learn so much from. And I think even after a preview, it may be like a conversation, or, oh, you know, this scene maybe is too long. There's a couple repetitions here. We can kind of finesse this, right? And that may be my text, or it may be, you know, the directing working it a certain way. But it's a whole conversation. And I know, you know, we want the product right away, even for previews, but that's the wonderful thing about previews, right, is that the audience knows that it's still in process, and it's still time for the artist to figure it out. I think once it opens, you know, you let it go, but I believe it's still part of the process, and still, that was interesting, you know, okay, and it's, you see how it shapes with the audience reacting and everything. So previews are so valuable for that. Yeah.
You talked about when you were getting into playwriting and trying to figure things out that you were reading a lot of books. Are there books that you go back to, you know, if you get stuck or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I try to read. I read all kinds of things. I mean, I read a lot about, you know, I love history, I love politics, and I think whenever I get stuck, I always go back to local news.
Sure. Okay.
I love local news. There's so much going on in our world right now, and in the nation, but when I get stuck as a writer, I think I find a lot of inspiration from the events happening all around me immediately. So I think I go back to that. And then, and sometimes, if I get stuck or if I just go watch a movie.
Sure.
Sure.
But what about those books on those books on writing? What was the one that stood out to you the most and that you may go back to and like pick up and kind of refresh, or it's like, gosh darn it, I'm stuck, and how do I approach this? I don't know. I'm just curious.
Yeah. There are several, but more so than a book on writing, there was this lecture seminar that I went to once, and I took notes on it, and it was amazing. And I sometimes look at those. It wasn't even like a lot of notes. It was just like these notes that I have that I kept, that I always kind of go back to because they're so helpful. And the lecture was, it was the University of Guadalajara presenting this lecture at the LATC, and I was invited to it. And the writer that was giving the lecture, the screenwriter, his name is Guillermo Arriaga, and he wrote the screenplay for this amazing Mexican film called Amores Perros. And he's written other things, and he's directed some things. And he had this amazing lecture, and some of the notes that I take, they're just like these one-line notes on maybe 2 pages of notebook paper. But one of them that I always remember says, he was talking about stories, and he was talking about, writers are completely different, and you write for your species, and no matter how large or small the species is, you have to write for that species. And so your plays may be popular hits, and you keep writing those popular hits. Your plays might be these small, intimate things that are done in little theaters, and you keep writing those. You know what I mean? And so whatever your stories are, or your films are, whatever you're writing, I think you have to trust what you're writing and believe in it, and know that there's going to be an audience and people on the other end that are going to be receptive to it. That's something that gets me unstuck all the time. It's just like, I know who I'm writing for, I know why I'm writing, and I just go back to that mantra, I guess you could say, or that statement. I love that statement because it's so true. I think writers are completely different, and that's the beauty of it. Right. And I love everything. All writers have their own taste. I certainly do, but I do appreciate everything, and I love watching it as well.
Are there elements of playwriting that you still struggle with?
Oh yeah, I think everything. I mean, it's an elusive art. I mean, it's so, I don't think I'll ever figure it out. I mean, that's why it's so cool. It's and every play is going to be, every project, whatever it might be, is going to be its own like puzzle that needs to be figured out. That's how I felt as an actor with different stories. It's like, oh, it's the same thing, but it's not, right? And how do I ask these rigorous questions to get close to what this story is? But everything about playwriting is still a mystery to me. And it's the cool thing though about playwriting, it's a cool thing about acting, is it's interesting. Like actors, unlike professional athletes that are kind of done when they're in their early 30s or whatever, or right, dancers, or dancers, right? Actors have longevity. They can continue acting until they're much more mature, right? I think writers we have the same benefit, right? It's not this like young one and done thing. I think the older we get, the more tools and more wisdom we get, the more nuanced our work gets. And that's what I look forward to. It's like, what kind of writer I'm going to be 20, 30 years from now. And I'm going to know a lot more, but I'm still going to be like, I know nothing about writing, which is cool. But yeah.
On that note, what, outside of King of Norwalk, what are you working on right now?
Right now, I'm going to be very honest. Right now, I'm focused on the beautiful moment that is The Little King of Norwalk being produced by a wonderful ensemble, great director, great company producing. I'm just so grateful. I'm just focused on that. I have another idea for another play, another question, and thing that I think I would like to, wrestle with in a play and help answer. But that's it right now.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Where can people find your work?
People can find my work by just emailing me and calling me or finding me on Instagram, Israel López Reyes. That's my Instagram handle. They can reach out, and I'm happy to start a conversation. But the best way to find my work is by seeing The Little King of Norwalk, which is happening. I love when people read my plays.
Sure, yeah.
I love it more when they witness them, because that's ultimately the play, right? It's a living, breathing thing. And so to answer your question, and just as a plug, buy a ticket to The Little King of Norwalk.
Ticket link will be down below. Yeah. And when is that? And where is it?
Saturday, October 4th through Sunday, November 2nd at the Los Angeles Theater Center. Buy your ticket, meet me at the bar, and we can have a drink and talk about all the wonderful plays happening with the Latino Theater Company.
Are you going to be at every performance?
Well, it's interesting. I work there, so
oh, that's fine.
It's Monday through Friday. So I think I'm, for sure I'll stay and watch and also not just to be oh, my play, it's whatever. But
I get it.
But
you should be there.
Yeah, but to learn and be that's really interesting with my, with the writing process in general. It's such a benefit to watch the work, right? That'll be really fascinating to me, and I'm excited to learn more. But yeah, I'll be there. I'll be hanging out there. I'm always at the LATC these days.
That's awesome. So on that note, for the if anybody wants to read anything, are those posted anywhere? Are they on New Play Exchange? Are they on a website you might have, or they just reach out, email me, and I'll send you a PDF?
Yeah, I'm old school. Just call me or email me, and I'll respond. They're not online for anyone to read. It's just a really personal process and ask and request and answer type of deal with me.
Well, you can shoot me your email, and I'll include it in the show notes as well.
I will.
And lastly, because I know, and you've already answered it, but I'm going to ask it anyways because it's the last question we always ask.
Yeah.
Are you on the socials?
Yes, I'm on the socials. Well, I'm on a social, I should say, and that's Instagram. My Instagram handle is at Israel López Reyes, and that's spelled ISRAELLOPEZREYES.
Well, Israel López Reyes, thanks for coming on to this episode of Playwright Spotlight.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Again, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share this show with your friends. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. And in the meantime, and until we see each other again, keep writing.